Hi, this is Gary Auden, and I'm bringing you an EDUCast of VoIP innovations discussing the shift from P2P to A2P, something which a lot of you don't know much about. As we always do, we introduce who we're speaking to. With me today is Tim Lin, Product Manager of VoIP Innovations. And as we usually do, we talk about our agenda. We're going to talk about A2P trends, why we're seeing a shift from P2P, how this affects the customer experience, some practical applications, how VoIP and telecoms relate in this environment, and some future trends. So Tim, let's start off with communications trends. What's happening with A2P today? And before you start that, would you just define A2P for us?
Sure. So A2P stands for application to person or application to peer. It is the means of communicating with a person via a script or program, some sort of application. And we're seeing a lot of shifting to an A2P communication between customer and company, whereas before we had a more P2P relationship. To give an example, doctors' offices are starting to look into sending text message notifications of appointment reminders rather than having a person sitting there dialing all of the people that have appointments for the next day.
So this is a trend we're seeing where people are starting to listen to or view something that an application creates rather than a person having to type in. Is that correct?
Exactly, yes.
Well, let's move on to the next slide. We have this acronym P2P, and we're moving from or migrating from P2P to A2P. Would you discuss that for us?
Certainly. So P2P would be peer-to-peer or person-to-person, and that's what ultimately we used to do. We had, the secretary at a doctor's office making phone calls or reminding people of appointments, and it's been shifting more to an A2P. We have a lot of different programs out there, applications that allow you to send mass text messages to people or even robocalling people to remind them of those appointments.
Now, let's talk about what this means to the customer experience. What does this offer to us?
It allows them to focus more on the experience for the customer at the office rather than taking that time to contact customers and notify them. It also allows for more scalability within the company and allows maybe a smaller company that didn't have the resources to make those calls and communicate with their customers. It allows them to do it without much more resources.
We've got this Portio research that says something significant, and then move into the three drivers.
So the three drivers for this A2P include a more secure way of handling authentication on online websites. To give you an example, most online banking sites now have an option to put in your cell phone number, and whenever you try to log in from a different computer, it'll send you a text message to your cell phone to authenticate you. This ultimately allows them to add an additional layer of security for those customers. It also allows, like my example before, a lot more communication between the companies and the customers. There's the appointment reminders for doctors' offices, and also there is a local crafting store around where I live where you text them a short code and it starts sending you different promotions that are available in store every week or so. So it allows people to opt into those sales and promotions, and it ultimately is cheaper for the company than sending out those flyers that you used to get in the mail. It's also a great way to reach target groups. If you have people opting in, say if they're runners opting into a group, then you can send out a lot of messages to a specific target group, and you know that they receive those messages and are interested in it, rather than sending out a huge blast that that is basically, a shotgun blast.
We've been talking about practical uses here. Could you go a little further into those?
So the use of a doctor's office using it to remind people of appointments is really a big thing. The doctor's office makes money if you show up, and it's very important for doctor's offices to remind people of those appointments. If they don't show up, they don't get the money for them. So this is something that is ultimately a huge deal, and something that we used to do with people making those calls and reminding people of appointments. But now we've shifted to something that is much more manageable and much cheaper and much more scalable than having people making those calls.
We've been talking about how this helps the sender of the A2P. How does it help the user experience? How does it enhance that experience?
It enhances the experience by allowing that company to be in touch with their customers more. It allows the customers to be notified of things that they may be interested in, and it also gives them a experience where they can opt into certain pieces of communication and receive them instantly on their phone without the need of waiting for maybe a mailer or anything that would typically get lost in noise, like through email or in the snail mail.
The next slide brings up a comment that I thought was interesting. How does VoIP and the telecom world relate?
VoIP is pushing this A2P market in the telecom world. VoIP allows for applications to easily integrate with the existing telecom network, and it allows them to link that application with the SMS and phone network, and it allows that to form a cohesive bond. And ultimately, it's given that A2P market legs to stand on.
Now, we've been talking about A2P for a minute, but could you help us with predictions of what's going to happen with this? Because it sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, there are a lot of studies that are saying that the A2P market is going to become huge as we go on. And this is something that is a facsimile to what you're seeing in the fast food market. You're seeing a lot of different companies, Sheetz being number one, that have those kiosks in their store where you can order what you want from them rather than talking to a person. And this is ultimately a evolution of that and put on the communication aspect of companies.
You provided here a set of resources.
So the three drivers of A2P messaging is really important. It kind of shows you the three different ways that A2P is being used. And from reading that, you'll really get an idea of where we're going with that and what can ultimately be done in the A2P market. Also, the 5 artificial intelligence predictions for 2018 is important because we can put so much AI behind this A2P, and it ends up being a lot better for the customer because they can get instant responses for questions that they may have, and also will get a lot of information on their phone rather than needing to call in and talk to somebody at that company.
VoIP Innovations has been in business for a number of years. Would you provide some background information on your company?
Our parent company is called ABG Capital, and before we had VoIP Innovations, we had a company called Global Pops who handled dial-up internet service. We started getting into VoIP in around 2007, and we ended up purchasing a company and looked into seeing what we could do to get into that market. Since then, we've grown and we have become a large aggregator of different networks, And we have a back office that allows customers to choose what carriers they want their numbers on and ultimately manage a lot of their business through that back office.
As we do, we always like to have some information resources here so you can learn more about VoIP innovations. They have ebooks, they have white papers. We've done a number of EDUcasts with them. They also have a number of videos on YouTube, and they can be followed on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. So they're all filled with information that's well worth seeing. If you have some interest in VoIP innovations, and especially about the A2P service they're talking about, they have their email address, their phone number, and their website. And I'd like to thank you, Tim, for participating today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.